A lot of Nintendo Switch owners have of course been playing Octopath Traveler, which is a recent release from Square Enix exclusively for the Nintendo Switch, and it looks like a fantastic turn-based RPG. And a lot of people have been asking me what my thoughts are on the game Octopath Traveler and what I think about the game. Well, I haven't been playing Octopath Traveler, and that may come as a surprise to you because I do enjoy RPG games, but I've actually been playing another RPG game, and that is Shining Resonance Refrain. Now, I've been a fan of the Shining series for quite a while now. I remember when it was a dungeon crawler, I remember when it was a strategy RPG, and now they've seemed to have gone to an action RPG segment, and the series has been around for over 30 years, and I've always enjoyed the different variations within the series, but as time has gone on, the Shining series sort of has fallen off of a cliff and doesn't really seem to be that prominent within the RPG world anymore. Well, Shining Resonance Refrain is sort of a return to form for the series. I've been playing the game on the Nintendo Switch as Sega sent over a review copy of the game, so shoutouts to Sega, and honestly, there's a lot of things I like about the game. So in this video, we're going to talk about Shining Resonance Refrain and why you might like this game. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's get into what Shining Resonance Refrain is all about.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards!
So Shining Resonance actually released on the PS3 in 2014. It was a Japan exclusive game. It never saw an English translation. Well, Shining Resonance Refrain is an upgraded version of that game with a full English translation, some improved graphics, some added in content, and of course additional costumes that were available as DLC in the Japanese version of the PS3 game. Shining Resonance Refrain also adds in a side story mode, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but it's not really imperative. When you first start up the game, you can choose between the new mode or the original mode, and basically the new mode, it doesn't really make a huge difference. Just two more characters are added in and they sort of expand upon the story. There were some favorites in the original release of the game, but you can play either one pretty much. It is recommended that you play the original mode first, which is what I decided to check out for my review of the game. Now, as far as what this game is all about, you basically play as a character named Yuma, and Yuma is saved by the Princess of Astoria named Sonia. Yuma is trapped in a dungeon. She springs him out, and like a classic Bonnie and Clyde sort of thing, they go on the run and they go back to the main kingdom of Marga. Now, Marga is basically the hub town of the game, and that's where you meet the king of Astoria and basically learn what is going on. There's basically some evil people coming in, trying to take over the land, trying to implement all of this evil stuff, and you're not going to stand for that. So as Yuma, you decide to join the kingdom and basically fight against these evil people. Now, what makes Yuma interesting is that before his mother passed away, she gave him the ability to turn into a dragon. Yes, Yuma can turn into a dragon. And you know what? Dragons are pretty freaking cool. So while the story has some twists and turns in it, honestly, I wasn't too enthralled with it. It got better as time went on. It started out pretty slow, honestly. There was a lot of pointless dialogue and stuff that I just wanted to sort of skip, but I did want to get the backstory of it. About, I'd say, 8 to 9 hours in, it really starts to pick up, and you really get some interesting backstory on the characters and how things have came to be. But honestly, the story was probably one of the weaker points of the game for me. It's good enough to make you want to keep playing the game. It's good enough to make you want to learn what's going on and see Yuma sort of grow as a character, because he starts out very timid and then becomes a more powerful character as time goes on. But honestly, just sort of there. I think it does the job. I think it's a good catalyst to keep the game flowing and keep the game moving, but it's not something that you're going to write about in 5 years like, oh, this is the greatest RPG story ever. Now, like I said, you are based in the town of Marga, and Marga is where you basically get all of your different stuff going on for your character. There's items that you can buy, there's things that you can create, and of course there are upgrades to your weaponry, and that's done by something called aspect synthesis. Aspect synthesis basically allows you to get additional upgrades to your weapons, and it really expands the game. You control a team of characters at all times, so you'll want to explore different upgrades for the different characters based on what they're good at, whether it's combat or healing, ranged combat, up close combat, and the item synthesis and aspect synthesis really allows you to do that. That's a tough word to say. Synthesis. Now, as far as how the quests are done, there's a lot of different quests within the game. Of course, you have the main story quest that will propel the story along and keep the narrative going. There's also side quests that characters within the town of Marga have, and basically you could just walk up to a character. It could be something as simple as item collecting, it could be something as simple as removing enemies from there, and then they will give you an item or something for your troubles of going throughout and doing that. There's also some optional dungeons in the game as well. There's a grimoire in the game that's casting evil on the land, and you could go into these dungeons and basically wipe out, different characters, wipe out different enemies, and wipe out a boss character. You get something for doing those, and you of course get additional items by going throughout the dungeon. What's really important about that is the leveling up within these dungeons though, and you can actually use different items to adjust how you go into the dungeons that will adjust the H or the level of the different enemies within them. So that's actually a pretty important thing, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in my complaints about the game, which we're going to do in the second half of this video, because it actually plays an important role in getting your characters to a proper level, and we'll explain that a bit more. Now, as far as the gameplay is concerned, this is an action RPG, so if you've ever played a game like the Tales series or the recently released Ys 8 on the Nintendo Switch, you sort of know what you're getting into with this. It's basically a lot of button mashing, but it's not a bad thing in my opinion. You do different combos, and of course you have a big attack that you could do at the end of a combo by hitting the Y button. You tap A to do your standard attacks, hit Y at the end to do a big attack. Now, combat is done in real time and along with engaging a battle, so you always see the characters on screen, so you know if you want to engage this character or not. It's nice because I like things like that. You could sort of see what you're getting into. Aside from the traditional hack and slash in the gameplay, you also unlock force abilities, which as your character levels up, you get more of these force abilities, and they're basically your special attacks that take MP. Basically, you hit the L, you hold down the L trigger, and then you hit a corresponding button, and you can do a different attack or a healing thing, resurrect a character. Basically, it's based on the different character. Now, like I said, these attacks do drain your MP, but what I like about this game is you actually gain MP by doing your basic attacks within the game. So by hacking and slashing and doing your standard attacks, your MP meter will raise up. Now, there is an AP meter as well that is underneath the character that shows you how many hits you can do, and when it starts to get low, your character will be unable to do a hit. You can also dodge in real time, which is very important by hitting the B button to avoid incoming enemy attacks, because it's all based on actually hitting someone. It's not like you cast a spell and it's nowhere near the enemy, it's gonna hit them. It's not. You have to be within the range of the character, you have to be within the range of the enemy to hit them, and vice versa. So that really plays into the gameplay. The gameplay is very fast, and I like that about that. The combat is pretty fluid for the most part as well, with a few deviances thrown in there that sort of slow it down, but we'll talk about those a little bit later in the review. Now, you can control any character within the combat, and that's something that's really cool about this game, because honestly, every character that you get feels very unique and very different. All of their attacks are completely different from each other. All of their abilities are completely different, and that really sort of adds a layer of strategy to the game, and it also allows you to keep things fresh. If you don't like, playing as Yuma, you could switch to Sonya or another character within the game, and they all have unique play styles. They all have their unique abilities, and they all have their unique attacks. Now, speaking of unique, there are two unique things in the combat that sort of set this game apart from other games. The first is called BAND, or band, and this is a very Japanese thing that happens within the game. Basically, you build up this meter, and then you can bust out into a song with all of your characters, and basically, depending on who is the leader of the band and which song you choose, there'll be different abilities that are unlocked and different things that happen within the battle. It's pretty interesting. I kind of like the visual style. The music changes up as well. It's pretty curious. It's definitely very Japanese, but I think it's very cool. And of course, the other thing is the ability to turn into a freaking dragon, and that is where the game gets really fun, in my opinion. So like I said, Yuma has the ability to turn into a dragon. You hold down the L and R triggers, and as long as your MP meter is full or has a good gauge to it, you can turn into a dragon. And the dragon attacks are of course very strong and will really get through enemies and wipe them out. I really liked using it during boss battles because it sort of gives you an advantage and it sort of helps you out. Now, one thing you have to realize is that when the MP meter goes down, Yuma will then transform back into a human. So you kind of got to watch that. Make sure your MP meter stays high because it's constantly draining, and you'll want to switch back, because what can end up happening is if Yuma doesn't switch back, the dragon will end up consuming him, because it's basically one of the storylines in the game is Yuma trying to, you know, channel in using the dragon so that it is not overtaking him and overcoming him. And basically what ends up happening is if you use the dragon too much, basically he becomes unwielding and he'll start attacking your characters, and it's not a good scene. So something that you definitely don't want to encounter. So definitely watch your MP meter. But honestly, I like the gameplay in the game. I like the way the combat feels. There are a few problems though with this game, unfortunately. Some of them tie into gameplay and some of them tie into other things. Basically, my first problem with Shining Resonance Refrain are the difficulty spikes. For some reason, like, you'll just be going along and everything will be fine. There'll be different characters, different enemies that you encounter, and everything is cool. But then when you get to a boss battle, you will just get your ass completely kicked. And it's like, why didn't I feel this? I understand that there's difficulty spikes within games, but you would think that the common characters would start giving you a little bit of trouble, and they'd be like, oh, okay, I need to grind a little bit before I go to this boss character that I'm coming up against. But no, it never really feels like that. It's just you're sort of going along, everything feels fine, you almost feel a bit too strong, and then you get to the boss and you're just like, wow, I'm weak as hell. And that's sort of where the dungeons play an important role, in my opinion, because once you unlock the ability to go to these dungeons, you can level up your characters a lot quicker because there's a lot of enemies and there's a boss at the end of each dungeon. So that is very important within the game. You have to utilize the dungeons in order to keep your characters high, but I would have liked to have seen a little less of a difficulty spike. Actually, the first boss in the game, I actually died on him, and I was kind of like, wow, that kind of sucks. So it's definitely something worth noting. Keep your characters high and make sure you have a lot of items as well. Another problem I have with the game is the camera system. The camera is a bit wonky at times. It's kind of all over the place. I didn't really like how you can control it, but you can't control the speed of the camera. You can't adjust that in the option setting, and I didn't really like that. I would have liked a faster camera, in my opinion. You can reset it by clicking in the R stick, but it still feels a bit wonky at times, and it kind of gets in the way. And another thing I didn't really like is how you switch characters. In Ys 8, you can just do it by the press of a button, but in this game, you actually have to go into the menu system in order to switch your characters. And speaking of the menu system, for some reason, you can't use the analog stick in the menu system. You have to use the D-pad. It's kind of a minor complaint, but it's just kind of weird in my opinion, because why would I have to use the D-pad for this? Why can't I just use the analog stick? And it does sort of break up the flow of combat when you're switching characters in the middle of a battle, and I don't know, it could have been a bit more streamlined in my opinion. As far as the game's performance is concerned, I think the graphics look really good. Everything is very clean. It definitely doesn't look maybe like a PS4 groundbreaking title, as this is a multi-platform release for the PS4, the Xbox One, and the Switch, but I think it looks good enough. It looks very clean. The characters themselves are all very detailed. The environments look nice enough. There's a good variety in the environments. Maybe they feel a little bit lifeless at times, but I like the way the game looks. It's definitely a very anime style JRPG, but in this case it doesn't really bother me. I think it actually adds to the game. The music in the game is very well done as well, as music is a very important thing in the Shining universe. And the game's performance, like I said, is very solid. It's 1080p when you're in docked mode, 720p in handheld mode, and I actually played most of this game in handheld mode when I was on vacation, and I really enjoyed the way the game looks. It looks very crisp on the handheld screen, and I think they did a really good job with that part of the game. All in all, Shining Resonance Refrain isn't an action RPG that's going to set the world on fire. It's not going to be a game that's going to be considered one of the best of the year, but it's a very solid action RPG. And if you like action RPGs, I think you'll like this game. If you like games like Ys 8, you'll probably really enjoy this game as well. And one of the cherries on top of the ice cream sundae for this game is the fact that it's only $45. It's not a full $60 release. And for 45 bucks, I think you're definitely getting your money's worth. The main story will take you a long time. You can also do that other mode that we talked about that adds in the 2 new characters. That doesn't really change up too many things, but if you wanted to experience the game more, you could. The main story is long enough. There's side quests. There's, of course, the dungeons that we talked about. The game looks pretty good. There are some problems with it. There are some things I didn't like about it, but all in all, a very solid action RPG and a game I really enjoyed playing. So let me know in the comments section down below what you think of Shining Resonance Refrain based on the gameplay that you've seen, whether you've picked it up or whether you plan on picking it up. And thank you for watching this review. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. And as always, thank you for watching this video. I will catch you guys on the next one. Later.